Now look at this tranquil scene here. We got Shundi, an elderly kung fu master, bobbing up and down on a boat, drunk as all hell. It's really quite a serene and peaceful picture. And you know what? It makes me want to talk about Virtua Fighter 3, let's go. Hello friends, Dreamcast Enjoy here and welcome back to Virtual Tourism, a series where we talk about the locations, vibes and aesthetics of different games. Usually Dreamcast, but I will cover some non-Dreamcast stuff too. Today we're talking about Virtua Fighter 3 Taco Bell. Probably not the obvious choice that would come to mind if I asked you to think about an aesthetically pleasing Dreamcast fighting game. I mean, we've got Soul Calibur, we've got Dead or Alive too. Virtua Fighter 3 is probably not the thing that you would call to mind. It's generally not considered to be a perfect port, and even if it was, the arcade version of this game came out in 1996, so by the time the Dreamcast dropped, it was already a few years behind in the graphics race. None of that really matters to me though, and whilst I can definitely see it's not graphically as impressive as some of its more flashy counterparts, I think it has a certain low poly, uncanny charm, so let's get into those stages and have a look around. I guess it makes sense to go in the order of the character select screen, so we'll start with Akira, in his dojo here. This is actually a pretty good stage to start with, because I think it's fairly representative of what Virtua Fighter 3 was trying to do generally. Which is to say, it was trying to represent the most realistic picture of a place it could, but with limited and slightly out-of-date assets, making the whole thing look a little bit uncanny. Visually, we can immediately see it's a dojo. We've got the Japanese placard on the wall here, probably representing the name of the school. We can see the texture of the walls, showing a little bit of wear and tear, and we can see a nice lush forest out there beyond the wooden windows. In keeping with Akira's character, the dojo looks very traditional, there's no real modern accoutrements. In the background we've got a drum of some sort and a wall scroll. The whole thing's pretty simple and bare, just wooden beams, a wooden roof. You can see what seem to be some bamboo mats off to the side, maybe for training. But during the match we've just got the hard wooden floor with the white markings to denote where the fighters start. I like the simple earthy tones, you know, the lacquered wood all over the dojo, like I say, the forest in the background. You can see some little slits or vents in the wall on one side, maybe for ventilation. It's stark, it's stoic, it's traditional, it's no nonsense. It suits Akira. Now let's move over and have a look at Pai-chan's stage on this rooftop here. This stage is set in Hong Kong, and the first thing you'll probably notice about it as a feature is it has lots of little birds flying around on the roof. These guys are dynamic, if you go near to them they'll fly away, if you move away they'll fly back and land. It's just a nice little touch. And probably because of RAM limitations we don't see any people wandering around in the street or anything, so having these birds here is a nice way to make it feel a little bit alive. There is some texture work on the buildings here that I really appreciate. Again, everything is a little bit worn or shows signs of aging, and that just helps it to feel a bit more grounded. We can see big signs all over the street for various businesses and shops. A lot of them are written in Chinese, but we can see sort of the perfume and cosmetics. There's the blue sign here with a spiky character, and that's actually called Hedgehog Company. Something that I've actually just noticed now upon making the video. If we take the camera out and look a little bit downwards, we can see some canopies and stuff that are rendered in a way that you probably would never normally see them. You only ever normally see the street level when a character gets knocked off stage, so it's really brief. The fact that they've bothered to make anything at all is much appreciated. We can see sort of wires and metal gates across the street. Obviously there's the grating on the roof as well with the little red trim that looks really nice. I don't know what building we're supposed to be on top of incidentally, but I always assumed it was Lau's restaurant, because obviously Pai's his daughter. That was my headcanon when I was a kid. I think I just knew the family connection and that Lao had a restaurant and just kinda made that assumption in my head, but it's always stuck with me now that I always feel like we're on Lao's restaurant. But if anybody does know what this building's meant to be, please do let me know. Hey, speaking of Lao, let's get over to the Great Wall of China. So I will say this is one of the more memorable stages for me because it is a pretty baller move to have the entire Great Wall of China as your fighting stage. Kind of insane that Lao just claimed that for himself. Aesthetically, it does have a very simple look. It's just got slightly broken cobbles and rock that you fight on. On either side you can see towers with flags, and then in the background we can see some green mountains and hills rendered and see the wall carrying on. It's grand and impressive and quite fitting for Lao as a character, but I'm not really sure that I have too much more to say on this stage, so we'll scooch on. Sorry Wolf, your stage fucking sucks and so does your dumbass cowboy outfit. I am only joking, of course. Wolf Hawkfield fans, please do not come for me in the comments. I never got why this was Wolf's stage though. I mean, he's Canadian, as far as I know there aren't any deserts in Canada. He's also a wrestler. Normally he's fighting in like a wrestling ring or a cage match type of situation, outdoors, in a chilly Canadian environment. I never got why we got this stretch and expansive desert. It's simple enough and it plays a little bit more like a Tekken stage with it just being an infinitely scrolling map, but I guess that's impressive in its own right, and it does look nice with the sort of very vivid sunset in the background. Or the nice Sega blue sky in the daytime variant. Speaking of Sega blue skies. Mariner's power! That's right baby, it's Jeffrey McWild time. This is the best goddamn stage in the game, and one of the nicest stages on the whole Dreamcast in my opinion. This kind of tropical beach aesthetic was very popular for lots of games in the late 90s and early 2000s. Sega obviously did it a lot with stuff like Emerald Coast and Sonic Adventure, but then Nintendo were also doing it with Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker, but something about the way it appears here just really hits. If somebody asked me to summarise Sega in one image, I might be inclined to show them this. Something about the way the water is rendered, the little low poly seagulls, the big blocky palm trees, everything about it is just so tranquil and peaceful with the vivid, almost too blue colours. It harkens back to what I said about this game being a little bit uncanny. Obviously you can look at this and know it's not a real beach, and yet in some ways it's realer than any beach I've ever been to, and I very much would like to go there. Fits with Jeffrey's whole vibe, being a fisherman and wanting to get a better boat and fight the devil shark. In the background over there's a gazebo type structure with a straw roof, maybe for barbecues, parties, something like that. And on the other side, we can see a more traditional style house. Maybe that's where Jeffrey lives, I don't know. But it's nice to speculate and it's nice to have these little details in this stage. Kage's stage is sat on the steps of this traditional Japanese temple, maybe a Zen garden type of area. Like with Akira's stage, it's a lot more stark and traditional, but it has a little bit of an unearthly feel to it with the pinky red sky. On the opposite side from the temple gate we can see what looks like the top of a castle, and the stone pathway through the stage is kind of worn and scuffed and kicked around. I really think textures do a lot of the work in Virtua Fighter 3 because this is a very simple stage, but I can recognise it immediately because of how the walls are textured there in the background. They're distinct from, say, the Great Wall or the city walls in Pyre's stage. We've got these rocky, stony fortress walls that fit for a temple gate. Let's hit on my girl Sarah Bryant now and get a little bit more urban down in the subway station. The thing that stuck with me about this stage from being a kid was the constant presence of the moving trains. It's a simple touch but it makes a difference. We've also got the maps and posters dotted around showing the different stops on the line or maybe the different attractions that you can see while you're in the area. Beyond the gate we can see the stairs carry on up onto the street level. And again I've got to applaud that texture work of the grimy industrial ceiling with the tangle of pipes all around it and the little wire coming down to the fuse box. They're just little details that I wouldn't think about and I wouldn't miss them if they weren't there, but I definitely appreciate that they are, you know? Alright, let's stick with the Bryants, it's Jackie time. This stage is cool as hell and it fits with Jackie's kinda cocky daredevil personality. We've got a half-built skyscraper here that looks like it's actively being constructed with the sparks falling everywhere from the welding, the big pile of girders on the floor, the precarious glass paneling that we're fighting across. And in the background we've got the big sprawling nighttime city with the skyscrapers and the brightly lit windows. Stuff that would feel right at home in some of Sega's other fighters like Fighting Vipers or Last Bronx. But let's get out of the city, let's calm our minds, and let's go to the peaceful harbour here with Shunde on his little boat. Like Jeffrey's stage, this one gives me great peace of mind. I like seeing the boat bob up and down, I like seeing the boys sway in the distance. I like how the main body of the raft is kinda cobbled together from different bits of wood. Gives the whole thing a very homemade, carefree vibe. And even though the background in this stage is incredibly low res, I do also think it's quite detailed. On the one side you can see bigger parts of the city with skyscrapers and ports, On the other side we can see more peaceful seaside areas. Shenmue type beats, which makes sense really. Lion's stage is big and grand and regal, which is fitting because I think he's supposed to be like a rich posh kid. The stage is an old library, so there's little arches with bookcases embedded in them. Even if we come down here off the side of the stage, we can see the rows all lined up and the interestingly coloured tiles. I guess everything here is meant to look opulent with the gold trim and the red carpet, and the big ornate balconies hanging up over the top there. Let's get out into the snow now with my girl Aoi. I love the vibe of this stage. It reminds me a lot of Ryoma's stage Mutsu from Power Stone, with the little stream running down from the mountain through the snowy grove, the stark white background everywhere, the little bamboo forest. Everything about this one is very austere, very simple, but it really does establish a sense of place. You do feel like you're fighting on a chilly mountainside. The kind of place where you might find natural thermal spas and that kind of stuff. The gently falling snow, the slowly flowing stream, the crisp frosty air, it's got a real stark beauty to it. Taka Arashi's stage might be one of my favourites. You've got the big outdoor sumo ring with the markers a little bit like Akira's stage, but it's the background details where this one shines. The path in the background on one side is lined with a bunch of red torii gates, and we can see blessings or charms or mantras pinned onto them. The stage seems to be set high up on a mountain because the background is very misty and we get a sheer drop off one side of the cliff. And we also get some huge birds swoop in and circle in the sky, which is just very cathartic to sit and watch. Let's give it a look for a minute. Last but not least, we've got this cave stage, who I'm not actually sure is meant to fight here, so I just shoved Doral in here. It feels maybe like the kind of ninja cave you come across in games like Tenchu Stealth Assassins, so maybe Kage would fit here. Either way, we've got the little glowing fire at the top lighting up the stage. In the background we've got light breaking through the cracks of the huge cave structure, and we got a bunch of low poly stalagmites and stalactites all over the place. Looks like some crystals or geodes off in the background as well. It gives a sense of being very deep below the earth in some kind of labyrinthian structure. I'm not exactly sure what this stage is all about, to be honest with you, but I like it just fine. And you know what guys, that's all the stages in Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle. And even though this is definitely not the prettiest game on the Dreamcast, I do hope you'll agree with me that these stages have a certain rustic charm to them. I think that's true of Virtua Fighter games generally, to be honest with you. Wouldn't be opposed to covering Virtua Fighter 4 at some point so I can talk about Vanessa, my favourite character. But we'll leave that for another day. For now folks, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've had a good time, and I will see you in the next one.